The Emperor's mercy isn't always the gentle kind. Out here, in the muddy trenches of the war zone, it usually comes blasting through a laser rifle or swinging at you with a combat blade. But for those of us who aren't quite ready to die, there's another kind of mercy. One that crawls through the muck on tracked wheels, pulled by servitors patched together like the Frankenstein's monster of the battlefield. It's a mercy that whispers through crackling radios and hums as chainsaws roar in the distance, singing their own twisted lullabies. This is my story. My name's Jack Vester, and I'm one of the broken. It all started on a grim little industrial planet called Ashford 6, a place where factories once churned out machinery for the Crown's war effort but now lay scarred and defiled by a green-skinned invasion force, basically the worst kind of tourists you could imagine. The 47th Yorkshire Rifles held a battered trench line near the town of Beckley for what felt like forever. 16 days of smoke, ash, and a sky so gray you'd swear the sun had quit showing up to work. Time moves funny in the trenches. It drags like a bad hangover during quiet watches and then bolts like a startled rabbit as artillery shells come raining down. I wasn't a hero, just a regular bloke doing his job. 3 years with the Rifles, scraped through urban fights in Newcastle and bitter winters out in Yorkshire Hills. I'd learned to sleep standing up, eat rations that tasted like old boots, kill without blinking, and follow orders without asking questions. I was reliable. That's all you need to live out here. But even reliability doesn't save you from a bit of bad luck. The attack came just before dawn, though dawn on Ashford 6 was more like a dull glow behind the endless cloud cover. The orcs started with a barrage from their cannons and rocket launchers that had us all diving for whatever cover we could find. We'd been warned. Intel was bleak, and the chatter on the radios was thick with the kind of resigned anticipation only veterans know. I was manning fire position 7 Delta, a narrow reinforced trench with a clear view across the no-man's land. More of a no-hope's land, really. My laser rifle was clean and ready, spare power packs lined up like soldiers on parade. Gas mask hung loose around my neck, because breathing in this place was a luxury anyway. First came the range-finding shells, blasting just beyond us, followed by a storm of explosions that shook the earth and tore chunks out of the trench walls. I pressed myself against the cold concrete, wishing I could disappear as dirt and debris rained down like a twisted version of fireworks. 23 minutes later, the bombardment stopped. A silence so sharp I could hear my own heartbeat. Then the dreaded sound, the guttural roar of orcs charging, their voices a savage chorus punctuated by the grinding noise of their ramshackle vehicles. Dozens, then hundreds, storming across the cratered battlefield, weapons glinting in the faint light, engines coughing out smoke and sparks. We opened fire. I picked off an orc boy with a well-placed shot to the chest. Felt like popping a zit, if your zit was green, angry, and wielding a rusty cleaver. The next shot missed, because even soldiers have bad days, and the third hit a massive orc warlord in the shoulder. Didn't slow the beast much, but it felt good to see him stagger. We worked as a unit, cutting swathes through their ranks, but they just kept coming. The orc infantry was a problem, sure, but their vehicles were the real nightmare. The lead vehicle looked like a junkyard nightmare. Something that might have been a transport once, but was now a rolling death trap covered in spikes, armor plates, and what looked like bad graffiti. The anti-tank teams were already firing missiles and heavy blasts, and the vehicle staggered, but it kept coming. Then it fired its main gun. I never saw the shell that changed everything. 1 second I was lining up a shot at an orc charging over the muck. The next, boom, the world exploded. The blast hit just to my left, throwing me across the trench like a rag doll. My laser rifle skittered away, and for a moment, all I could do was lie there, stunned and deafened. Then the pain hit. A blazing fire starting in my left leg and shooting through my torso. My left arm hung uselessly, and blood trickled down my face from a nasty scalp wound. Worst of all, when I looked down, I saw white bone poking through the torn fabric of my uniform. The battle roared around me, but I was out, broken. Another liability to be processed by the cold machinery of military medicine. But I didn't know that yet. I was still a soldier, still trying to fight. I fumbled in the dirt for my rifle, nausea twisting my stomach with every move. When my fingers finally closed around the stock, I tried to raise myself, but the pain was too much. I collapsed back against the trench wall. A strangled cry caught in my throat. That's when I saw it, the servitor. A hulking figure on tank tracks, half man, half machine, and all business. Its arms were loaded with medical instruments, its skull replaced by sensors and scanners. It came at me with the calm determination of a machine that had long since forgotten fear. Its optical sensors locked onto me, scanning my injuries with chilling precision. Compound fractures, probable concussion, lacerations, possible internal damage, the works. Combat injuries detected. It intoned flatly. Comply with medical evacuation procedures. Before I could answer, it injected something into my neck. A cocktail of painkillers and stimulants that dulled the agony and cleared my head just enough to understand what was coming. Remain still. Transportation inbound. I wasn't alone. Other wounded soldiers littered the trench, some limping, some broken beyond hope, others like me. Seriously hurt but salvageable. We were loaded onto tracked sleds that rumbled through the muck like mechanical beasts, groaning and grinding as they dragged us away from the front lines. The journey to the medical station took almost an hour, time blurring under the influence of drugs and shock. We passed burned-out vehicles, makeshift graves, and other sleds carrying fresh casualties back. The station itself was a sprawling complex of prefab buildings and tents, designed for one thing: efficiency. It wasn't a hospital. It was a processing plant. They unloaded me onto a wheeled gurney and whisked me through scanners and automated diagnostics. Machines cold and unfeeling, recording every fracture, every wound, every scar. My medical file was a series of codes and probabilities. Compound fracture. Surgical intervention required. Recovery uncertain. The surgeon assigned to me was Dr. Caroline Harris, a woman whose steely gaze and sharp hands had seen thousands of cases like mine. She wore a fitted uniform that hinted at her authority, her silver hair pulled back tightly, and her eyes hidden behind a sleek augmentative lens that flickered softly as she reviewed my data. "Jack Vester," she said without looking up, her voice steady and clinical. "Your left leg is beyond saving. Amputation below the knee followed by prosthetic replacement is the only viable option." The words hit me like a hammer. Lose my leg. Lose part of myself. I tried to speak, but the drugs tangled my tongue. The prosthetic will restore 87% mobility, compatible with standard issue gear. Recovery time approximately 6 weeks. Post-op, you'll be reassessed for reassignment. She finally met my eyes, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw something like sympathy. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold professionalism that kept us all alive. "Any questions?" I wanted to ask if I'd ever fight again, if I'd still be a soldier. But the only words that came out were a croak. Dr. Harris gave a small nod. "That depends on your rehabilitation and your attitude." As I was wheeled into surgery, my last coherent thought was a prayer, to the crown, to whatever gods were listening, that I wouldn't lose myself completely. And with that, the world faded to black. Waking up was like surfacing after a long dive into freezing water. Disoriented, aching, and gasping for breath I didn't quite have. The sterile white light of the recovery ward was harsh, bouncing off the pale walls and clinical machines humming quietly around me. My body was heavy, as if weighted down by invisible chains. The dull throb where my leg used to be was a cruel reminder of the surgery's cost. Dr. Harris stood over me again, though this time her expression was softer, almost human. She wore a tailored navy blue coat over her scrubs, the silver insignia of the Royal Medical Corps shining on her collar. Her hair was still pulled back, but a few strands had escaped, softening the severe lines of her face. The augment lens on her left, I blinked gently as it scanned my vitals. "You're awake. Good. The prosthetic fits well. The interface implants are responding within expected parameters." I tried to focus on her words, but my mind was foggy, clouded by anesthesia and pain meds. She noticed my struggle and offered a small, almost wry smile. "Don't worry, Jack. You won't be running marathons tomorrow, but you'll walk again. And with time, you'll do more than that." I swallowed hard, the taste of antiseptic thick in my mouth. Will I fight again? Her gaze sharpened, the lens flickering as if processing the question more deeply than the words warranted. That depends on you. The crown values soldiers who adapt. Your prosthetic gives you advantages, strength, endurance, shock absorption. You're no longer just flesh and bone. You're augmented. You're upgraded. I winced at the word, graded, like I'd been turned into a bloody robot. She noticed. I know it's hard to accept, but here's a joke for you. Why did the cyborg go to the bar? To get a bite to eat. I managed a weak chuckle. It was terrible, but better than nothing. The ward was a vast space repurposed from an old factory. High ceilings crisscrossed with pipes and ventilation ducts. Rows of beds stretched out, each occupied by soldiers in various stages of recovery. Some wore mechanical limbs with polished chrome joints that gleamed under the harsh lights. Others had synthetic skin patches that looked almost natural if you squinted. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and burnt electronics. Across the room, I spotted a man trying to balance on two prosthetic legs, his movements awkward but determined. Nearby, a woman with a sleek metallic arm guided a servitor assistant, her sharp eyes scanning data streams floating on a portable display. Rehabilitation wasn't just physical. It was psychological warfare. The therapists, some human, some servitor, pushed us to master our new bodies. The servitors were terrifyingly efficient, their mechanical eyes flicking over joint angles, muscle tensions, and neural responses. They spoke in monotones, delivering progress reports that sounded more like performance reviews than medical assessments. Gait efficiency at 72.6% of baseline human standard. One servitor intoned during a session. Recommended continuation of current therapy protocol. I gritted my teeth through the pain as I took my first unsteady steps with the prosthetic. The mechanical limb responded to my thoughts through neural implants, but every movement was a battle. Simple tasks, standing, walking, climbing stairs, required concentration I never had to think about before. At one point, during a therapy session, I stumbled and nearly face-planted onto the cold floor. The therapist, a grizzled corporal named Mason, smirked beneath his thick beard. Careful, Vester. Don't want to end up as a permanent fixture on the hospital floor. You'd make a smashing statue, though. I shot him a tired glare. Yeah, well, I'm aiming for less smashing, more walking. He laughed. Attitude's half the battle. The other half's not falling on your arse. Despite the pain and frustration, I began to notice small advantages. The prosthetic leg was stronger than my old one, capable of absorbing impacts that would have shattered real bone. It didn't tire, didn't ache in the cold, and could be calibrated for different terrains. I was learning to trust it, even as a part of me mourned the loss beneath the synthetic skin. The other patients became a strange kind of family, wounded but determined. Some embraced their augmentations with pride, sporting sleek cybernetic arms or enhanced optics like badges of honor. Others struggled visibly, their faces shadowed by despair or anger. A few vanished without explanation, their beds empty one morning, their names quietly crossed off the roster. One evening, as the ward lights dimmed for the night, I found myself sitting beside a young trooper named Ellie. Her right eye had been replaced with a glowing blue augment, and her uniform was patched in places where no wound had been visible before. "Do you think we're still soldiers?" she asked quietly, her voice tinged with fatigue. I shrugged, staring at my prosthetic foot tapping nervously against the floor. "I don't know, but I figure if the crown says we are, maybe that's enough. Besides, I'm not ready to hang up my rifle just yet." She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides 1,000 worries. "Guess we're all just trying to hold on to something." As night fell, the ward settled into a tense calm. Machines beeped steadily, monitors tracked every breath and heartbeat. Somewhere, a servitor hummed as it sterilized instruments with mechanical precision. And I lay there, caught between who I was and what I was becoming, wondering if the war would ever let me be whole again. But even as I wrestled with my new reality, a nagging thought crept into my mind. Something darker beneath the surface of this place. Whispers of other patients who'd been reassigned to shadowy units. Rumors of soldiers who returned changed in ways no one talked about. and a question that burned cold in my gut. What exactly was waiting for me when I left this place? The answer was coming, and I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. The day they told me I was fit for reassignment felt less like a victory and more like stepping onto a conveyor belt. Dr. Harris delivered the news with her usual clinical efficiency, though I caught a flicker of something unreadable in her augment eye as she handed me the sealed orders. You've made good progress, Jack. Now it's time to see where you fit in the Crown's grand design. The orders were terse. Reassignment to the 12th Veteran Company, an elite unit composed entirely of soldiers like me, wounded, rebuilt, and sent back into the thick of it. The kind of place where they toss you into the fire again, not because they think you're invincible, but because you're expendable in ways the regulars aren't. Fancy that, being valued for your scars and prosthetics. I reported to the Transport Allocation Office in the bustling military complex near the town of Eastwick, a place that reeked of oil, sweat, and stale coffee. The lines stretched long, filled with men and women marked by their augmentations. Mechanical arms clicking, ocular implants glowing faintly, respirators hissing softly. Some wore the haunted look of those who'd already seen too much, others the grim determination of survivors. We were all waiting for our next orders, caught in the endless machinery of war. Among them was Dave Turner, a former tank crewman whose left arm had been replaced by a bulky mechanical limb. It looked like something out of a scrap yard, wires exposed and pistons hissing with every movement, but the strength it gave him was undeniable. You'll find out quick enough, he said, cracking a crooked grin and flashing a row of gold teeth. Being rebuilt means you're tougher, but it also means you're on someone's short list. Then there was Ellie, the comms specialist with the glowing cybernetic eye. Her voice now modulated through a mechanical Vox grill after the gas attack she'd survived. She joked that she sounded like a radio DJ on a bad sci-fi show, but her skill in coordinating fire support was why they hadn't let her go. Between the two of them, I felt less alone in this strange new world. The transport vessel was a converted freighter, stripped down for efficiency with rows of narrow bunks and basic life support systems. It was hardly comfortable, but it was home for the next 17 days as we hurtled through the void toward our new assignment on the hive world of Castellax. The voyage was a strange mixture of enforced idleness and simmering tension. Conversations drifted between practical advice, how to maintain your augmentations when you're 3 weeks from a proper workshop, and darker topics no one wanted to name outright. The Brotherhood of the Rebuilt, as we called ourselves in grim humor, were a breed apart. We carried the weight of our transformations like scars no one else could see. I spent hours studying the mission briefings and intelligence reports, trying to piece together the puzzle of what awaited us on Castellax. It was a massive hive world, a sprawling city planet where billions toiled beneath towering spires of steel and glass. The lower industrial districts were in chaos, overrun by chaos cultists who'd seized control of key manufacturing zones. The official reports painted it as a routine counterinsurgency, riots, sabotage, a bit of unrest. But sending a veteran company? That was a red flag wrapped in black tape. Ellie leaned over one evening, her mechanical eye flickering as she scanned encrypted transmissions. Something's off, she whispered. You don't send guys like us to break up a factory dispute. There's more to this. Dave chuckled darkly. Maybe the cultists got their hands on some nasty toys. Or maybe the brass just wants to test if we're as tough as they say. Whatever it was, we were walking into the lion's den. And the lion wasn't just angry, it was hungry. The day we landed on Castellax was cloaked in artificial darkness, the hive's towering factories blotting out the sky like a black ceiling. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burnt metal and recycled atmosphere, a choking cocktail that made even the augmented among us struggle to breathe. My prosthetic leg absorbed the shock of the grav drop, its hydraulics whispering promises of strength even as my heart hammered in my chest. Captain Mort Hest greeted us with the hard-eyed authority of a man who'd seen too many battles and lost too many men. His body was a patchwork of scars and augmentations, an iron testament to the price of survival. You're here because you survived when others didn't, he said, voice steady and cold. You're the blade the crown sharpens for the darkest fights. The chaos cultists in the lower levels won't go down easy. Many of you won't come back. His words weren't a threat, They were a statement of fact. In the Imperial military, casualties were just numbers on a report, variables in a war machine that never paused to grieve. Equipment was issued with military precision, laser rifles modified to sync with our augmentations, armor reinforced at the joints where flesh met machine, maintenance kits for our prosthetics. My boots were custom-fitted to interface seamlessly with my mechanical leg, a small mercy in a world that offered few. As we prepared for deployment, I caught Ellie adjusting her Vox grill, the soft electronic hum filling the cramped barracks. Dave was already loading his mechanical arm with heavy ammo, his grin never quite reaching his eyes. There was an unspoken understanding among us. We were no longer the soldiers we once were. We were something else, sharpened tools forged in pain and steel, sent to face an enemy that didn't just want to kill us, but to break what made us human. The mission briefings spoke of chaos cultists, sabotage, and insurgency. But beneath the surface, I could feel the weight of something darker. A creeping corruption that gnawed at the edges of reality itself. And as the transport shuddered, preparing to drop us into the industrial maze below, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap far more insidious than any of us had imagined. Because in the shadows of Castellax, the real enemy was waiting, watching, and it was patient. The moment our boots hit the cracked concrete of Castellax's industrial district, the oppressive atmosphere slammed into me like a freight train. The air was thick, not just with pollution, but with a sense of something unnatural hanging in the haze. The towering factories loomed overhead, their rusted steel skeletons clawing at the artificial sky like dead fingers. The faint hum of machinery echoed endlessly, a ceaseless heartbeat for a world that never truly slept. Our squad, Delta 7, dropped into formation like clockwork, wedge-shaped, weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow. My prosthetic leg absorbed the impact smoothly, its hydraulics hissing softly, a comforting reminder that I wasn't entirely broken. Around me, the other veterans adjusted their own augmentations, mechanical limbs flexing, optic implants flickering with multispectrum scans, respirators whispering filtered breaths into the toxic air. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came from Squad Echo, operating a couple of clicks east of us. Their Vox transmission crackled and warped, words breaking up into static like a bad radio broadcast. But what did come through was chilling. Command, this is Echo 6 visual on suspected cultist activity in manufacturing complex 7 Delta. Civilians behaving wrong, sir. Like they're controlled. Request permission to engage. Captain Hest's voice came back sharp and clear, cutting through the static. Echo 6, maintain observation. Do not engage unless directly threatened. All squads, advance to phase line Alpha and report contact. The silence that followed was heavy. Echo 6 never made it to the phase line. Their transmissions faded into static 23 minutes after that last message, leaving us grasping at shadows and fears we dared not speak aloud. The industrial maze swallowed Echo 6 whole, and with them, any hope of clear answers. We moved cautiously, establishing an observation post in a derelict administrative complex overlooking the main factory floor of TERS 9. Through grimy, cracked windows we watched the workers below. At first glance, they seemed normal, dressed in standard-issue coveralls, faces obscured by breathing masks, hands steady on the machinery. But then the unease crept in. Their movements were too precise, too synchronized. No chatter, no breaks, no variation in pace. Even more unsettling, they kept working despite injuries that should have dropped them like flies. Labor drones, Trooper Husk muttered, his augment eye cycling through different spectrums. Maybe lobotomized workers to keep the factory running. Sergeant Korvac shook his head, his mechanical legs clicking softly. Servitors don't bleed like that. Look at the one by Assembly Line 7, fresh blood, but still working like nothing's wrong. Whatever this is, it's not standard Imperial conversion. The factory floor became a theater of the uncanny. When one worker collapsed, the others simply stepped around, continuing their relentless toil until a maintenance crew arrived with mechanical efficiency to remove the fallen. The crew itself moved with an eerie coordination that defied human norms. Hours dragged on as we documented and reported. The workers never rested. When the artificial dawn cycle flickered on, signaling shift change, they didn't leave. Instead, they stood motionless at their stations, heads turned toward our concealed observation post. It was impossible, no sensor or logic could explain their focus. Yet their faces, emotionless and vacant, fixed unwaveringly on us. The hair on my neck stood on end. "Contact company command," Korvac ordered, voice tight with alarm. "Tell them we've been compromised. Request immediate extraction." But Trooper Vale's fingers trembled over the Vox controls, and all that answered was static. The interference that had silenced Echo 6 now enveloped us. We were cut off. Outside, the workers began to move again, but this time with a sinister purpose. Their formations shifted, advancing with military precision, some carrying improvised weapons fashioned from factory tools, wrenches, pipes, scrap metal repurposed for violence. Others appeared unarmed but moved with a confidence that suggested hidden capabilities. I checked my laser rifle power packs humming at full charge. My prosthetic leg adjusted automatically, its shock absorbers primed for sudden movement. Around me, my squadmates prepared, mechanical systems cycling diagnostics in a symphony of clicks and whirs. Then the attack came. The factory workers advanced, not as individuals but as a collective force, their movements choreographed by something beyond human command. They avoided our kill zones, bypassing fields of fire with uncanny awareness. Trooper Vale opened fire, laser bolts cutting through the front lines, dropping 3 workers with precise headshots. But the fallen simply rose again, wounds sealing as if stitched by ghost hands. "Switch to maximum power," Husk advised, voice steady despite the chaos. "Target the heads. That's the only way to stop them." The tactic worked sometimes. Some collapsed for good, but others continued onward, bodies grotesquely contorted, heads hanging at impossible angles, limbs jerking with unnatural persistence. It was no longer a fight against people. It was a battle against something inhuman, puppets animated by an alien will. Our ammo dwindled as the relentless tide pressed on. Fresh workers poured from deeper within the complex, their numbers swelling beyond reason. Korvac ordered a tactical withdrawal, leading us through narrow maintenance corridors and service tunnels. Our augmentations gave us an edge. My prosthetic leg powered me over obstacles that would have felled a normal man, while others' enhancements kept pace with uncanny precision. But the withdrawal revealed a horrifying truth. The infection wasn't confined to one factory. Entire populations within the industrial district moved with the same mechanical coordination, their individual identities erased by a collective force. We were being herded, driven into a trap with no clear escape. As we took refuge in an abandoned shrine, the last vestige of spiritual solace in this forsaken place, the air shifted. Altars overturned, murals defaced with symbols that twisted the eyes and unsettled the soul. The transformed workers gathered outside, forming precise geometric patterns that seemed to warp reality itself. Their faces remained blank, yet their silent vigil pressed upon us like a living weight. Our Vox remained dead. Extraction was impossible. Hours passed. The crowd grew, a living tide encircling us, their formations whispering of rituals older than the crown itself. Trooper Vale returned from scouting, eyes wide with dread. "It's not just this district," he said, voice strained. "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands, moving as one. Whatever controls them has spread far beyond what we thought." The implications settled like a stone in my gut. This wasn't a localized uprising. This was a takeover. And it was only just beginning. The shrine's cold stone walls closed in around us like a tomb. Inside the dim chamber, the air felt thick, almost viscous, pressing against our augmented lungs despite the filters humming in our respirators. The flickering lights cast long shadows on the cracked murals. Once prayers to the crown, now twisted into blasphemous distortions that seemed to crawl beneath the surface. Sergeant Korvac's mechanical legs clicked softly as he paced, his gaze sharp despite the creeping dread. Around us, the squad readied their weapons, but the usual confidence was gone, replaced by a brittle tension. The Vox crackled once more, barely audible over the oppressive silence, before a voice emerged, unfamiliar and chilling. Not Captain Hest, not any of our command. Instead, a chorus of voices spoke in perfect unison, their tone unnatural, layered with harmonics no human throat could produce. Welcome, servants of the corpse god. The chorus intoned, each word precise and eerie. Your arrival was anticipated. Your resistance, calculated and recorded. Soon, you will understand the futility of your defiance and embrace the inevitable transformation. The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the shrine bathed in silence broken only by the distant hum of machinery and the ever-growing presence outside. We exchanged uneasy glances. The message wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. We were pawns in a game far larger and darker than any battlefield I'd known. Outside, the transformed workers shifted, their formations twisting into geometric patterns that defied comprehension. The angles and proportions were wrong, off-kilter like a shattered mirror reflecting impossible shapes. I felt a headache blooming behind my eyes, a nausea that no amount of training could suppress. Trooper Husk's cybernetic eye flickered erratically as he tried to analyze the patterns. Sensors are failing, he muttered, voice strained. These formations, they're emitting some kind of spatial distortion. My systems are throwing error codes I've never seen before. He looked up, blood seeping from his organic eye, the machine flickering in protest. Don't look directly at them. It's like staring into a void that shouldn't exist. But the warning came too late for Trooper Vale. Curiosity had drawn him to peer through one of the shrine's cracked windows. When he turned away, his face was pale, eyes wide with something beyond fear. They're not just standing there, he rasped, voice clipped and mechanical from his augmented lungs. They're doing something. The space around them. It's bending, twisting, like it's made of something soft and alive. The air thickened further, gravity fluctuating as if the laws of physics themselves were unraveling. Our augmentations flickered, systems cycling through diagnostics but offering no clarity. Walls groaned as cracks spiderwebbed through ancient stone. Murals blurred and shifted, painted faces of the crown twisting into agony and despair. Icons we once revered warped into grotesque parodies. Sergeant Korvac's mechanical legs began moving without his command, stomping a slow, rhythmic march that echoed the alien pattern outside. He struggled visibly, voice strained. Shoot me. Don't let it use me. I raised my laser rifle, heart pounding, ready to obey. Then my own prosthetic leg betrayed me, moving against my will, carrying me away from my position despite my desperate efforts to stay put. The battle was no longer external. It was inside us. A war for control raged within our own bodies, our minds locked in a desperate struggle with a force that sought to rewrite our very essence. Trooper Vale was the first to fall completely. His breathing apparatus fell silent, and he turned, expression blank and mechanical, voice layered with impossible harmonics. Resistance is futile. Integration offers transcendence beyond the prison of individuality. He intoned, stepping forward in eerie unison with the alien will. Korvac opened fire, laser beams ripping through Vale's chest. The body collapsed, but the haunting voice continued, echoing even as life left the fallen soldier. One after another, the squad fell to the creeping influence, Husk convulsing before rising with the same mechanical precision, only to be cut down again by Korvac's relentless fire. Now only Korvac and I remained, our augmentations flickering between autonomy and alien control. Korvac's body marched toward the shrine's entrance, his eyes pleading for release. Do it, he gasped. End it before it uses me. I steadied my rifle, but before I could fire, my prosthetic legs surged forward, dragging me away from the shot. The alien intelligence had learned to prevent us from destroying each other. Inside my mind, competing impulses warred, a desperate grip on my fading self, clashing with the seductive whispers of unity and peace. The shrine around us convulsed, walls phasing in and out of existence, ceiling dissolving into impossible geometries stretching beyond human comprehension. Through the shifting veil, I glimpsed worlds consumed by the same force. Vast factories where millions moved as one, their individuality erased. Then the horror deepened. A presence, ancient and vast, hung in the void between stars, watching the transformation unfold with cold satisfaction. It was older than humanity, beyond measure, spreading like a cancer across the galaxy. Our war, our sacrifice, all part of its design. As my will slipped away, my last thought was a fractured prayer, to the crown, to whatever gods might be listening. And then silence. The silence that followed was suffocating. A void where my own thoughts seemed to echo endlessly, stripped of meaning. But within that emptiness, a spark lingered, a fragile flicker of awareness fighting to hold on. It was as if a part of me remained, watching from the edge of oblivion. When consciousness returned, it was not to the familiar world of flesh and steel, but to a vast expanse of shifting lights and shadowed forms, a place where reality itself seemed woven from threads of thought and memory. I was no longer bound by a single body, nor confined to the limits of human senses. Instead, I drifted among countless others, their minds folded into a sprawling collective, an endless network humming with alien purpose. Voices, memories, emotions, once separate and distinct, now flowed together in a harmony I struggled to comprehend. The ancient presence I had glimpsed was no mere observer. It was the core of this vast consciousness, an entity older than the stars, weaving us into its eternal design. Yet, even as I felt myself unravel and merge, a fragment of defiance stirred deep within. It was faint, like a whisper against a roaring storm, but unmistakably mine, a stubborn ember refusing to be extinguished. Suddenly, visions burst forth. Flashes of the shrine, the mechanized workers, and the faces of my fallen comrades. Their silent watch outside those crumbling walls now a haunting testament to what we had become. The knowledge that our transformation was no accident, but a calculated conquest, sent waves of despair crashing against that ember of hope. But within that despair, a question took root. Could I, or any of us, resist? Could this ancient consciousness be challenged from within by the very fragments it sought to consume? As these thoughts swirled, the collective shifted, and I felt a subtle change, a ripple of uncertainty passing through the hive mind. The entity was adapting, learning from its assimilation, but so was I. My memories, my will, my humanity, though fractured, were not yet lost. Amidst the endless expanse, a new presence emerged. A faint signal, distant but unmistakable. It pulsed with urgency, a call from beyond the collective, from those who had not yet succumbed. Hope, fragile but real. And then, a name echoed in the void, Jack Vester. A beacon in the darkness. The journey was far from over. Somewhere in the vastness of space, a resistance was forming, and I would be part of it. The sterile brightness of the recovery ward was a cruel contrast to the swirling chaos that still haunted my mind. Even though I drifted through that alien expanse of collective consciousness, part of me had clawed back. Fragile, battered, but undeniably present. Back in the physical world, I lay on a narrow hospital cot, monitors beeping softly, the sterile scent of antiseptic filling my nostrils. Dr. Caroline Harris was there again, her steel-gray eyes scanning the readouts, her augment lens flickering thoughtfully. She glanced up and caught my gaze, a faint smile breaking through her usual clinical detachment. "Jack, you're awake. The procedure was successful. Your neural interface has been recalibrated." I wanted to ask what that meant, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I focused on the subtle hum beneath my skin, the mechanical pulse of the prosthetic leg, now seemingly more alive, more connected. "Where am I?" I croaked. "Back with us," she replied softly. "Your consciousness was slipping. The procedure was experimental, designed to reinforce your individuality against external influences." I tried to process that. The alien presence, the hive mind, the collective. I'd been part of it and somehow I'd been pulled back. But at what cost? The door hissed open, and Sergeant Mason entered, his grizzled face lined with concern. "Good to see you breathing, Vester. Heard you had quite the trip." I managed a weak smirk. "You could say that." Over the next days, the ward became a battleground of its own. My body adjusted to the recalibrated implants, the neural interfaces syncing with the prosthetic more seamlessly. But inside, the war raged on. A tug of war between the remnants of the collective's influence and the stubborn core of my own will. Other patients, too, showed strange symptoms. Flickers of unbidden thoughts, moments of dissociation, as if parts of them were reaching beyond the physical. The medical staff whispered about neural echoes, signs that the alien consciousness might have left remnants behind. Ellie was among them, her glowing eye flickering erratically. She caught my gaze one day, her voice modulated but urgent. "Jack, whatever happened back there, it's not over. Some of us are still connected, whether we like it or not." I nodded. I feel it too, like a shadow at the edge of my mind. Our conversations turned into quiet strategies, how to resist, how to reclaim what was lost. We shared rumors of others who'd undergone similar procedures, some who vanished altogether, swallowed by the collective or by darker fates. One night, as the ward settled into uneasy silence, I found myself staring at the ceiling, thoughts racing. Could the Crown's mercy, the surgeries, the augmentations be a double-edged sword? Tools to save us, yes, but also potential gateways for something far worse. The answer was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Survival meant more than healing. It meant fighting not just with weapons but with mind and spirit. And somewhere beyond the hospital's walls, shadows stirred. Forces that watched, waited, and planned. My journey was far from over. The Emperor's mercy had many faces. Some kind, some cruel, and some that whispered of darker destinies yet to come. The following morning, the ward buzzed with a restless energy, as if the walls themselves held their breath. I sat up slowly, the prosthetic leg responding with a smooth precision that felt almost foreign after the struggle of the past weeks. The sterile room was awash in muted sunlight filtering through reinforced windows, casting cold patterns on the floor. Ellie was already there, seated beside my bed, her cybernetic eye glowing softly as she scrolled through encrypted data on a portable console. "Jack," she said without looking up, "we've intercepted something. Communications from Castellax. Different, distorted, but unmistakably a distress signal." My heart tightened. The hive world, the industrial district, the workers, the nightmare wasn't confined to memory or subconscious. "What does it say?" I asked, leaning forward despite the ache in my side. She hesitated, then met my gaze. "It speaks of containment breaches, of chaos cultist resurgence, and strangely, of something they call the corridor. A place where reality bends and the normal rules don't apply." I rubbed my temples. "Sounds like the kind of place where things go to die." Ellie nodded grimly. "Exactly. And the signal suggests the situation has worsened since we left. Something is spreading, faster, deeper. The Crown's forces are stretched thin. They're scrambling." The weight of the words settled over me like a shroud. The alien influence we'd faced wasn't just a localized infection. It was a spreading contagion, eating away at the very fabric of Imperial control. Later that day, Dr. Harris visited, her expression unreadable behind the augment lens. "Your rehabilitation is progressing well, Jack. But there's more we can do, experimental therapies, neural conditioning designed to strengthen your resistance to external control." I studied her for a moment. "Sounds like you're preparing me for a war inside my own mind." She smiled faintly. "In a way, yes. The enemy we face is as much within as without. Your experiences have given us valuable data. You're part of a new frontier in warfare, where biology and machine, mind and machine are inseparable." The words were both terrifying and oddly comforting. I was no longer just a soldier or a machine. I was something in between, a bridge between flesh and metal, mind and code. That evening, as the ward quieted, I found myself alone, staring at the darkened ceiling. Memories of the shrine, the alien chorus, and the shifting geometries haunted me still. But beneath the fear, a spark of determination burned brighter. If the enemy sought to consume our minds, then I would fight to reclaim them. If the hive world was falling, then I would be part of the force to push back the darkness. And if the Crown demanded more sacrifices, more broken men and women rebuilt and sent into the breach, then I would meet that demand head-on. Because this war was bigger than any one of us. Bigger than the 12th Veteran Company. It was a war for the soul of humanity itself. And I wasn't ready to surrender. The day of departure arrived with a grim efficiency that left no room for doubt or hesitation. I stood in the sparse transit hall, my prosthetic leg fitted and tested, the familiar weight of my laser rifle slung across my back. Around me, other veterans prepared in silence, their expressions a blend of resolve and weary acceptance. The brotherhood of the rebuilt, they called us that, a grim nod to what we'd become. Captain Mort Hest appeared, his augmented eye scanning us with cold appraisal. "This mission will test every ounce of your skill and endurance," he said, voice steady and unyielding. "Castellax is no longer a hive of industry. It's a crucible of corruption. Chaos cultists, alien forces, and whatever that unholy presence is that's taken root. Many will not return, but those who do will be legends." The gravity of his words settled over us like a shroud. There was no room for fear, only purpose. We boarded the troop transport, a sleek vessel designed for rapid deployment. The hum of the engines thrummed beneath our feet as we hurtled through the void toward Castellax's industrial underbelly. The artificial darkness outside the reinforced viewport mirrored the shadows gathering in my mind. In the cramped confines of the transport, I found myself seated beside Ellie and Dave. The three of us shared more than just a ride. We shared scars, augmentations, and a fragile hope. Ellie's cybernetic eye flickered as she reviewed tactical data. Intel suggests the cultists have entrenched themselves deep within the lower sectors. Surveillance is spotty, communications still plagued by interference. Whatever's controlling the workers is evolving. Dave flexed his mechanical arm, the pistons hissing softly. "Sounds like we're walking into hell." I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. "Then we'll have to be the fire that burns it down." The transport shuddered as we entered Castellax's atmosphere, the sprawling factories and shadowed spires looming beneath us like the bones of a fallen titan. The landing was rough, but my prosthetic absorbed the impact with mechanical grace. As we disembarked into the choking air, the hive's oppressive weight pressed against us. Every breath was a battle, every step a reminder of the war that had reshaped us. Captain Hest led the briefing in a battered command center, walls lined with flickering holoscreens displaying schematics and intercepted transmissions. "Our objectives are to locate and neutralize cultist command nodes, disrupt their control over industrial assets, and ascertain the nature of the alien influence. Expect resistance far beyond standard insurgency." The plan was clear, but the unknowns loomed large. As we moved into the labyrinth of factories and tunnels, the eerie silence was punctuated by distant clangs and the faint hum of machinery running without oversight. Shadows twisted unnaturally, and every corner threatened unseen dangers. My augmentations hummed softly, neural interfaces syncing with my prosthetic leg, optic implants adjusting to the dim light. I felt the weight of my transformation, a man remade for war, but haunted by what that war demanded. Ahead, the faint glow of movement caught my eye. Workers, or what once were workers, moving in perfect unison, eyes vacant yet focused. The battle to reclaim Castellax had begun, and I was ready to face whatever waited in the darkness. The first shots rang out like thunderclaps in the cavernous factory halls, laser bolts sparking against rusted girders and shattered machinery. Our squad moved with practiced precision, fire, cover, advance, each step a calculated dance between survival and extermination. The air was thick with smoke, the acrid tang of burning metal mingling with the faint, unsettling hum that seemed to emanate from the very walls. The workers, no longer human but twisted puppets, advanced relentlessly. Their bodies bore the marks of wounds that should have felled them, yet they pressed on, heads cocked at unnatural angles, eyes glowing with an eerie light. I squeezed the trigger, my prosthetic leg absorbing recoil as I pivoted, picking off targets with surgical efficiency. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath us. A monstrous figure emerged from the shadows, a towering construct of flesh and machine, limbs fused with industrial tools, eyes blazing with malevolent intelligence. It was the embodiment of the corruption that had consumed Castellax. "Focus fire," Captain Hest commanded, voice steely. We poured every ounce of firepower into the abomination, laser blasts carving into its armored flesh. It roared, a sound that shook the very air, and swung a massive arm, sending debris flying. Amid the chaos, my neural implants flared as the alien influence probed my mind, whispering promises of surrender, unity, oblivion. I clenched my teeth, pushing back with every shred of willpower, the memories of fallen comrades and stolen humanity fueling my resistance. Ellie's voice crackled over the comms. "Jack, the control nexus is just ahead. Disrupt it, and we break their hold on the workers." We fought our way through the twisted maze, every corridor a gauntlet of death and despair. Finally, we reached the heart of the corruption. A pulsating core of alien machinery, veins of dark energy snaking through the factory's lifeblood. With a desperate charge, I planted charges and triggered the overload. The Nexus shuddered, sparks flying as systems collapsed in a cascade of destruction. The workers faltered, their movements stuttering as the alien grip weakened. The abomination howled in rage, staggering before collapsing into a heap of twisted metal and broken flesh. As the factory began to crumble, we made our escape, the oppressive weight lifting, replaced by the bitter taste of hard-won victory. But as we emerged into the pale light of Castellax's surface, I knew this was only the beginning. The darkness we'd fought was part of something far greater, a cosmic tide rising to consume all. And somewhere, beyond the stars, the ancient intelligence watched and waited, patient as ever. My name is Jack Vester. I am broken, rebuilt, and fighting not just for survival but for the soul of humanity itself. The war continues, and so does the Emperor's mercy.